We're going to look at some backgrounds from Gravity Falls because that show takes place a lot in Forest 2. And let me open, find my file. Is it in downloads? What? No? Maybe it is in the front. I can't see it. Oh yeah, there's one. So what we're looking at here is the kind of like, we've talked about this before, sort of like layers of closeness. We have this in the foreground that's all very, very dark. You could think of that as being clipped out of paper and it's one layer. Then we have this kind of mid-range where the colors are a little bit like washed out by the light that's coming down. And then in the very, very back in between the trees, we have light colors that you can't almost really tell if it's sky, is it foliage, it's just all muddled back there, and that's almost like a third layer. So we've got this foreground, middle ground, background, and you'll see it a lot in different types of forest pictures, even one with a road.
I was doing a lot of intro on forests, and this is very true.
Yes, exactly. Same kind of a thing, even though this road is curving around, so it looks very much like it's all one picture plane. We still have trees here that are darker in color, and then they get lighter in color, and then they get into the back where they're really, really light. So we've got those 3 stages of foreground, middle ground, background. Same thing happens even at night or at dusk, whenever this might be, where we have this foreground that in this case is lighter. We can see the different colors of the trees, and as they go farther back, they get into silhouette. So no matter if it's nighttime, daytime, in some way or another, we're going to have differences between foreground, middle ground, background. So let's go ahead and open up a new file. I'm going to work on a standard piece of paper that's 8.5 by 11. Actually, let's make it wide. So the width is going to be 11 inches. The height is going to be 8.5. Or if you want it to fit into a frame, you can do 8 by 10. And I'm going to do 200 DPI. And say OK. And I'll have this beautiful blank canvas on which to create. And right away, I'm going to get 3 layers and I'm going to name them FG, foreground. You can also just type out foreground if it's easier to remember. MG for middle ground. Actually, maybe I will type them out so that later if somebody's looking at this video going, what? Midground, foreground, background, and sky. We may not even get to the sky, but just so you know, sky is not part of the background. And you can order them any way you like. You can have foreground at the top and go down to the sky, or if it makes more sense, you can have sky at the top and it can go down to the foreground, whichever makes more sense. To me, it makes more sense to have the sky at the bottom. I tend to have my paper at the bottom, so this way makes more sense to me with foreground at the top, midground, background, sky. And I'm going to begin with the midground because the midground is generally where your character is. That's the focal point. That's where we want people to look. So I'm going to get a sketching color here of, I don't know, blue. Grab a pencil tool. Some of you already have character art that you're going to stick in, so you'll have your pose already. I don't have anything in mind, so I'm just going to make a character right now that is headed off for adventure, holding a sword or something. Walking through this forest very confidently. or what will be a forest, no forest yet. So I've got my figure and it's smack dab in the middle of the paper. That's usually pretty boring. So I can decide if I'm going to put my character more to the left, more to the right. That's up to me. I think I'm going to go ahead and put it over on the left, and then maybe I'll think of something fun to put on the right a little later. So I've got my mid-ground character, and my character needs to be on some kind of road, some kind of ground, and it needs to be above the feet. I don't want to put the ground plane there because that would mean he's like walking on the horizon. So I'm going to put it above, give myself a little ground line. And I'm going to get a real thick brush and just start painting in, blocking in, even bigger than that, some tree trunks. This is our sketch layer. This is where we're planning things out. So things are going to be, whoops, quite messy, quite scribbly, but we want to start getting something down on the page so we can start making some decisions. So here I've got 3 kind of big trees in my midground. Maybe some branches, maybe some foliage. That's going to be my midground. Maybe some bushes back here. All still midground. For my foreground, I'm going to get a darker blue and start putting some stuff down here. That stuff can be more trees, more bushes. If you're not sure what to do, you go back, you look and go, what kind of stuff is in a forest? Mushrooms, rocks, fallen logs, flowers. That's where reference comes in real handy. So let's say I put maybe a rock right here, maybe a couple little rocks, little family of rocks. Maybe there's some big flowers growing here. It's very childlike at first. Remember when you were just a little kid having fun, scribbling on paper. You didn't care about perspective or composition or foreshortening. You were just putting stuff in. That's what we want to get back to. After I've got stuff on my paper, then I can start going, well, I don't know if I like this big rock next to this big tree. And with the beauty of digital, I can just take my rocks and go, maybe I want them a little more over here. Maybe I want part of a tree that's leaning to be right in my foreground over here. Keep scribbling, keep putting in things. Maybe there's a bush right here. Work in silhouette.
So I have to ask you, how did you move that rock?
Oh, we just, we'll grab our little lasso tool, the one that looks a little bit like a peanut, and you can just circle whatever element you're going to move, but then you have to switch over to the move tool.
Oh yeah, okay.
And then you can move it wherever you need to move it. Once it's where you want it, enter, Control D. Maybe there's a squirrel watching him walk by. One thing that's important to note, when we started off, there was a lot of ground down here. If there's nothing important that's going to be down there, You might also try just moving the whole thing down. And now up here, it's going to be that easy foliage, trees. And your foreground doesn't have to be, whoops, doesn't have to be as full of stuff. You could just have a couple of flowers, a couple of things happening down there. So don't be afraid to move your character around to where it feels like it's serving your story a little better. In fact, I think I kind of want my foreground to flip and have the tree on the other side. Easy way to do that, I go to Layer, Rotate, and Flip horizontally. Boom. Get that tree over there. Do that same trick to move my squirrel. I just circle it, move it, layer, rotate, flip horizontally.
Oh.
Whoops, wrong color. Background, like we saw from some of our example images here, are this just more of the same, more bushes, more trees, but they're just going to be in the distance. And I'm going to lighten up my color to a very light blue and start dropping in more tree trunks, more bushes, another tree trunk. The skinnier ones tend to look farther away. It's true that they could also just be young saplings, but in general, they'll look like they're farther away. Thicker trunks will look closer up. So move your stuff around. Get those blobs in there. You might even want to try shrinking your character, making it bigger. For the ease of doing that, I'm going to cut and paste my character onto another layer. So I'm just going to do Control X to cut, Control V to paste, and then get rid of that dotted line with D for deselect. And now I can move my character.
This is very useful information.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
This is great. We actually did some of this before, but
it's good to review, isn't it?
it's huge because I remember doing it, but I don't obviously remember how we did it. So this is helpful.
I don't remember if we ever went over this.
Oh, way back when, and I don't even remember which class.
1907.
No, it wasn't that long ago, but we did three
Well,
layers. Three layers.
It
was in the summer.
Yeah, I think maybe it was like story art or one of those.
Might have been.
So you've got your composition, or do you guys want to have a few minutes to kind of fiddle around with it a little bit more? Well, I didn't hear an I'm done, so I'm going to give you guys another 5 minutes and then check in.
But what do you mean by done? Like I was.
You have your layers?
Like a little kid thing. I'm not done.
No, it looks something like mine, where you have a foreground, middle ground, background.
Okay.
With very little white space in between. Excellent. We will go ahead and I'm going to maybe demo this on a new file just because I don't want to have to draw over my stuff at first. So trees are going to be incredibly important. Depending on your style, of course, you might be doing something very simple like Gravity Falls. Their trees aren't necessarily realistic. They have these foliage shapes that just sort of flow right out of the trunk. There's not really any branches to speak of aside from these like little guys that poke out. But if you want something that's a little bit more like naturalistic looking trees, that's what we're going to do right now. And we're still going to start out with a silhouette. So I'm actually going to change over to my pen tool so that my color is solid. And we're going to take a look at how trees are not exactly these straight up and down poles that we think they are. So I'm going to begin with the trunk of my tree. I'm going to do like what we think trees are and then how we might change them. So for this tree over here, it's going to be what we think trees are. We think trees look something like this with a trunk and then some kind of blob of leaves on top. Like that. However, in our picture-in-a-picture class, we've been working very hard on making branches thinner as they get to the top and thicker as they get back to the tree. This one doesn't even have branches to speak of, but let's say we do this, right? There's like a little kid tree. So let's instead start with the idea that tree trunks are not perfectly straight and that branches get thicker as they come to the base. So my trunk is going to have a little more wiggle to make it look a little more like it's actually grown over many, many years. And if you start looking at trees, once we can all go back outside again and enjoy nature freely, well, I guess we can do that right now, but socially distanced. A lot of these trees have like secondary branches that come out quite low to the ground, lower than we think. A lot of times we do this really straight trunk and then branches grow at the top. But whenever I'm walking, there's like an almond tree orchard near my house.
Ooh.
And the trunks are pretty short. If you count wherever the next branch comes out as like the top of the tree and that this is the trunk is pretty short because they have these branching off very close to the ground. And of course, every branch then branches off into another and another and another. So you can go ahead and make, oops, I'm running out of paper here. Another beautiful thing about digital is you just make it bigger. We're going to start adding, oops, not 200, 2000. Top center, nope, top bottom, there we go. More of these branches, whoops. Even this one is going to split again. Each of these are going to split. And all of these are going to get just slightly thicker as they go into the main trunk. So we're not going to have any branches that look like triangles like that, but we do want just a little bit more thickness as they come in. That one's a little overly done. Let's try that again. And you can keep these going and going and going. They don't have to be straight. Trees have to grow up in various bad weather, storms, droughts. So already if we compare one tree with another, one's looking a lot more naturalistic. other thing that we're going to look at is the root section. Trees don't just get sucked into the ground like this with like this neat little curve. They have that root system down there, which is going to cause lots of bumps. A little more thick at the base. These roots are basically like inverted branches. If you ever look at some science textbook on trees and the root picture that goes down, pretty much like the branches on top. Thicker as they get into the trunk, thinner as they go down, branching off all over the place, anchoring that tree down. And you might be saying, Betsy, I'm not gonna draw an X-ray view of the ground. Why would I draw this root system? Because the cool thing is, especially in fantasy art, some of these trees grow over rocks. So you can put in like a rock shape, or maybe the ruins of a long forgotten villain's castle, and these roots will grow over it. So it's a good thing to study roots in case you ever want to have them exposed. But let's say it's not exposed, let's say it's just growing in the forest normally. Still, these roots are going to be maybe in the grass somewhere like this, with some of the root part exposed. It's not going to be here and just growing straight out of grass. We're going to see some of these roots lumping up before they go down into the ground. So that will also help out your trees. And yet we are still working in silhouette. So I'm going to move on, new layer, so that I can draw over my blue layer and not mess it up at all. I'm going to zoom in here. So right now, all of these branches are on one plane, right? They're just in silhouette. So I need to pick, is this branch going to curve toward me? Right, and put those curved lines to make it curve toward me, or is it on the other side of the tree and it's curving away from me? With all of these branches, we need to decide, is this one curving toward me? Is it curving away from me? My pen's a little thick here. Can we see where it goes into the tree on this side? Or is it on the opposite side of the tree? Even when you get to these little sections that divide off, does this one come forward? Or is it on the other side and it's curving away? All those little decisions are going to make this tree look so much better than the first one that I doodled. If you have any roots exposed, same kind of deal. We want to be able to know that this is curving. It comes forward toward us and then it curves back down. Of course, you don't have to do this for every drawing you ever make with trees in it, but it's nice to understand, to do this every once in a while and go like, oh, I get how this one is curving toward us. But then when we get to this section here where it turns, that means it's going to go back down. It's very similar to a leg, actually, with a knee. That the thigh is coming towards us and then it goes away from us. This one's coming toward me. This one's going away from me, but this one's coming toward me. And you get this really cool looking 3D tree. From silhouette to 3D awesomeness.
But you probably wouldn't leave those lines on it because trees don't, palm trees have the actual contour.
Oh, the actual, no. But it does come a little bit into the bark texture. So if you all are ready, we will move on to how do you do bark texture. I'm going to change my color to one of a tree, probably a brown, right? You're making your bark, probably going to be a brown tree. Whoops, got to change it to layer. There we go. I've lightened up my contours so that we can't see them as much. And let's zoom in here. So when you're doing your bark texture, excuse me, I am going to get one more layer, call this ink. Get a black. We're going to have some main lines that grow with the limb, right? We have a few going like that, but we're also going to have a cross contour texture. So you're going to throw in a couple of lines that go right into the line. Depending on how comic book looking you want to get, you can add in spot black, like you can color this all in black, and then the texture will kind of reveal itself as it comes up this way. Should have had some examples ready. I'll do better next time.
Okay, there they go.
All right, you can see that coming. This guy's going away. Again, I'm going to put in some lines and then start putting in a little bit of cross contour here and there. Let's go to another one. I have the lines of the growth, and you can see I'm also making those varied. Thin and thick, there's no real science to it. But now I want to bring in that cross contour. Doesn't have to be a big deal, just a few lines here and there. This one's going the other way, so I'll have a couple of lines going the other way.
Man, I did not construct my trees well enough to do this.
Well, now you know. You can do it next time.
Yeah, because I mostly just did like, I did like very big sort of gestures. That,
And like I said, depending, I mean, if you're doing Gravity Falls style, I mean, they're mostly trunk. If you're doing those kinds of trees, that's totally fine too.
yeah, okay, want to see what I did?
Yeah, let's take a break here. It's already 5:30. Let's see what you guys are doing, how it's coming. Let me stop my share.
Yeah, because I've been trying to do that, the bark thing, but it. Yeah, I did not construct these trees well enough to do that.
Beauty is digital. You can change anything.
I did this.
Looking good so far. You got some branches in there, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know, I've just been doing this.
Yeah, start get even if it's
That's
just
the item.
yeah, even if it's sketchy, just start figuring out how to make these branches go away from you toward you, and then you can put in some indicators. But absolutely, we can do plenty with these trees. You can even just add some more little branches, like it. Yeah, it'll be fine.
What you, Kristen?
I haven't done much of anything. I've got the one little tree. All right, here, let's back off and I'll show you. I just started doing this. Okay, share. So I'm just playing around with this stuff in here.
I see the contours working.
I should have changed the color on these lines. I think to make them go back a little and it looks better, but that's detail. I can do that. This would take a while, so I'm not doing it right now.
Yeah, no worries. I can see that you're following along. So let's take a look then. Like you're saying too, this black can be really harsh, even if I take off my sketches and I go, okay, there's my finished limb. I don't know, it looks a little harsh. I don't maybe want all that black on my drawing. We can protect alpha. We can get a little bit darker brown. And a nice easy way to do it is not clicking with the paint bucket because it'll stop, but we hit the insert key on your keyboard and it'll fill the whole thing.
There's an insert key.
On mine there is. If there isn't on yours, you might have to do it by hand. The other way is just grabbing a pencil really, really big and then just coloring it by hand. You can do that too.
So you have those lines are on a separate layer, right?
Yes, these are on a separate layer so that I can protect my alpha. If you don't protect your alpha,
yeah,
that
there
happens.
You go.
Yeah.
Or if you have them on the same layer with the tree, then
yeah. Then
because I had no problem changing the color of the tree, but the black stayed black.
Yeah, so good to find that out on practice for sure.
Yeah, separate layers, always layers.
Yeah. And then it's easy to change your color too. If I go, oh, I don't really like that color, we bring up our old friend, hue, saturation, brightness, and I can say that, you know, I want them more gray, or I want them more bright, I want them darker, I want them a slightly different color, maybe I want them more towards purple.
Green, that's pretty.
Yeah, the green was nice. So then if you have it on that separate layer, you have this control, whereas if they were on the same layer, you wouldn't be able to do that. Yeah.
I understand the same layer problem very well.
So those were the branches. Let's just go ahead and see how I would finish up the tree and get my new color here. It's the same thing for the trunk though. We're just going to be, oops, I gotta take off my Protect Alpha. Making those lines that flow down the tree trunk. We're making it a little bit varied. So we've got skinny portions, we've got thick portions. You can even have more of like a twisting tree trunk. You get to some of those like bonsai and gnarly ones. You can start making it twisting. Of course, you have to change your outside to match the bumps. But you'd be amazed at how many trees get like thrown off the straight up and down course that we're also used to. But in general, you're just going to keep doing the same thing of having the lines that go with the tree trunk, and then we'll still come in, and after you've picked which way your light is coming from, you'll put a little bit of that texture on the dark side. And since this one is all the way around on the other side of the tree, depending again how much shading you do with your inking, you might come in here and put lots and lots of texture on these ones that are not getting the light as much. And then on these ones that are on the bright side, there might only be a little bit of that texture. But what we're trying to show is that the contour of this tree is curved on all these little guys here.
The way you're inking reminds me a lot of like a comic style.
Exactly, that's what I was mentioning. If you do this, it's more of a comic book style. If you're doing it like a cartoon, like, you know, Gravity Falls, your shading is much different. It's all in color, right? And your texture is only minimal. So again, style comes into it a lot. If you're like, my character art doesn't have this kind of shading, probably don't put it on your background either then. You would want it to be consistent. In fact, up here, maybe we'll do it like a cartoon because I think I draw more like animation style than I do comic book style. So for an animation style, I might just put in some lines for that tree trunk texture, unless you want it to be like, you know, broken up bark or something. Vertical lines are usually enough to get the point across that it's a tree. Still have those branches, still have a little bit of cross contour every once in a while. Notice it's not a big deal. It doesn't go all the way across. It's not big and thick. It's just those tiny little gesture lines to kind of give it a little bit more form. Whew, that was a lot about trees and tree trunks.
Oh,
Are
so
we...
helpful though. We like to do trees.
Yes, this is true. We like to do trees. So let's maybe do it together on our piece that we're working on. How do I go from this to this, right? Or something like this. So let's pick a tree. I've got a pretty prominent tree right here. And I've got that problem where it's just straight up and down. So the first thing I need to do is probably fix the silhouette. So I'm going to grab this same mid-tone blue, grab my pen tool on my ground layer, and I might have to erase some actually so I can have some room to make this a normal looking tree. So let's start with my silhouette of branches that get thicker as they go to the trunk. A trunk that is thin and then gets thicker as it goes down. Maybe some branches kind of go down that way. They didn't get enough sunlight. Maybe one kind of shot off into like a secondary tree over here. If you find your trees are not looking very much like trees, you want to make them look more natural. Another way you can look at it is to look at the spaces in between. Are these all different shapes or are they looking kind of the same? If they're looking the same, probably a good idea to make it so they are not the same by just coming in and changing the silhouette in some way to add a branch maybe crossing through or to move a branch higher or lower. So work with that silhouette first. Maybe this part is bulging a little too much and I want to not have it bulge so much. How come my eraser's not working? Am I doing something wrong? I'll use my pencil then. See how it's on Alt? Oh, there it goes. Okay. Technology boy. Sometimes they just throw you for a loop. So I'm working on the silhouette first. I want to show you how, you see it's getting a little symmetrical up here. These two white triangles are kind of ending at the same level. They're getting kind of similar here. That should warn me, whoops, not looking very good. So you can always cut it back. Try again. If they say I got a triangle that size, now I want a triangle of bigger size. And now I'm getting some really great things happening with this one, all these negative spaces are turning out differently. And don't forget your roots. If you can see where the tree goes into the ground, and get rid of these bushes here. If I can see where this tree is going into the ground, I don't want it to just go straight into the ground. I want a little bit of some roots going off that way. That squirrel's going to block most of them, but I'll put a little root coming off this way before it goes down into the ground.
Oh, hey, before this class ends, can I ask you, like, about, drawing a more, you know, semi-painterly, like the thing I'm doing?
Sure.
Because I was going to work on bark before I worked on the mushrooms.
No problem.
Also, I want to know how to shade rocks. Because I have, like, a rock.
Yeah, let's shade that rock too. I'm going to move this branch. It's too symmetrical to the other one. So let's do that. Let's improve our tree silhouettes. Branches, roots, trunk. one of them on our picture here. You can even do it on a new layer if you don't want to mess up your mid-ground layer. Just about 2 more minutes to refine your tree silhouettes. Let me know if you're not happy with what's going on. We'll find some ways to make it better. All right, so you've got your tree in silhouette, some branches, some roots. I'm going to make a new layer. Call it contour. And in another sketching color, maybe pink or dark purple. Just so I can start deciding which ones are coming toward me, which ones are going away. I'll stick on some lines to just remind me. Don't neglect the roots, even these just little stumpy shapes that come forward. We need to know if they're coming in toward us, away from us. If your tree happens to have some kind of hollowed out portion, owl family lives there or something, you can also stick those in. Then I lighten that layer, get to my real ink layer, black. And I can come in here and start deciding where my final lines are going to be and what's overlapping what. Trying to make sure that my shapes are being true to trees, getting thicker as it goes to the trunk. You can see I'm not following my blue silhouette exactly. I'm refining it as I go, making these skinnier as they go up. Right now I'm just cutting off the limbs because the foliage is going to cover it up anyway. Depending on your art style, you don't have to close off the shape. You can leave these breaks in the lines every once in a while, and then you'll just hand color where it's supposed to end. If you're doing painting style, you would skip this inking stage and instead you'd be doing this with the actual silhouette and you'd be refining it even more. be more tree-like. For the roots, your ink line can do double duty. So on the top here, I'm drawing the root, but then as I come to the underside, I'm actually just drawing the grass because we can't see that bottom line of the root. Same thing.
So why did you decide to do black
for the lines?
Just because it's inking?
Just because it's the ink layer, yeah. I can always change this to brown or something else later. Same thing on this one. I did the top of the root and then on the bottom, a little bit of grass texture. On this one, I did the top root, this bottom part. Whoops, not on the right layer. I can add a little bit of grass texture. Roots also tend to have, I heard somebody say it's like a snake that swallowed hard-boiled eggs. It's more of like a bulbous texture for your roots. Not like a beaded necklace or anything, but every once in a while there's like these swollen sections, if you like that style. So on this one I did a little more where I have these sort of mounds coming up out of my roots. So at this point I've just got the outline basically of my tree. And you don't actually want your background to be more interesting than your character for the most part. So the amount of texture that I put on this tree might not be that much. I could probably get away with just a few lines here and there, a few contour lines here and there. So those weren't very good. The thing with contour lines is it's worth it to work slowly. If I just kind of try to put them in, they usually just make the drawing worse. So with my contour lines, I take my time, show that roundness, connect it right back into the inking line. You can have some of your vertical lines go around where these branches protrude, like I'm coming straight down here, but then whoop, gotta go around that branch. Want to feel the roundness of these limbs. And again, you're not going to do this to every single tree. This is only going to be in the midground where things are in the most focus because your character is there. So anything else in this distance is also going to be in that amount of detail. So you might do this to, what did I have, 3 trees on this layer? Originally, yeah, I had 3 trees. And then I think we'll have time for foliage. The other great thing about digital drawing is I could probably just copy and paste or duplicate this inking layer of my tree, move it over here, flip it, skew it, change some branches, and I've got a whole nother tree.
I feel like this drawing style is cool, but I feel like most of the time I wouldn't have the patience to meticulously do this.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If you're going for painting, it's way faster.
I like the part where you duplicate flipping.
Yeah, right? I mean,
that tree made sense.
Yeah. Glancing at this, you wouldn't go like, oh, you copied and pasted that tree. Well, even if I did, like, you don't like it, make your own. Oh, right. I think I need more canvas for the leaves just to show you guys. So I'm going to add some canvas to mine. Bottom center. This is now, what, like 2,500 maybe? There we go. So we're going to find a painterly type brush. We could probably use the fluffy brush. Let's take a look at this one. Nope, that's not fluffy. Maybe I gotta make it bigger. Nope. Probably particle brush then. Particle, spray, anything that makes, nope, not particle. Thorn? How about flat
They have
brush?
the leaf brush.
They do have the leaf brush. The only thing I don't like about the leaf brush is that all of them are at the same level of detail. And we don't actually want that. But maybe we'll go ahead and use the leaf brush and then make it not so perfect. So we're going to grab the leaf brush in a very, very, very dark green, almost black. If it's scattering too much, where you have these leaves that are too far away, you just go over here to scatter strength and you take that down so that they don't fly. Oh boy, no, not that one. Particle random. It shouldn't fly away so much when you take down the scatter strength. And also if you press lighter on your tablet, they won't go as far. So I'm going to stick in some general globs of leaves. In this dark, 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 dark green color. Oops, what layer am I on? I should check that. No, not the ink layer. Back that up. Let's get a new layer.
Man, I've read so many comics where the leaves kind of just look like the way you drew them. And now I finally realize why they all look like that.
Because they use the brush, huh?
Not that exact brush, but like, you know, the general look.
Yeah, general one, huh? Yeah, honestly, I just don't like that leaf brush. I'd have an easier time just doing it with a regular pen, honestly. The general thing we're trying to accomplish here is to get a textured blob. I'm gonna make my blob here. Pretty good. But I don't want it this smooth on the outside, so that's where I'm having some trouble finding a texture brush that will give us a little bit kind of a sketchier quality or a little more texture on the outside.
Oh, I used a brush for like the leaves in this painting, but I forget what it was now.
This fluffy one's okay if you turn it way up to like 250, and then it'll give you these nice little bumps. to make it a little bit more leafy texture.
Oh, I found it. It's pointism.
Oh, pointism. Might have another little branch down here. Blob. So we've got this one super, super, super dark green. I'm going to go to a lighter, warmer green, meaning it's shifting a little more towards yellow. And I'm going to decide where my light source is. I'm going to do upper left just because I do that a lot, comfortable with it. And I'm going to sketch out another blob within that blob. Make sure your protect alpha is on so you don't go outside your blob. And this is going to start to become the area that's in sunlight. And you don't want to make it a stripe. It should be different from the darker green below it. So in other words, I don't want to just have like this even band across the bottom. I want some places to go very close to that darker color. Other ones are farther away. So we get the sense that there's these bunches of leaves hanging together. A little more like that. And we're going to zoom in here, get a regular pen again, get that same light color that we had, and we can, whoops, shrink our pen down to a drawable size and put the actual leaf texture that we want just on a few small areas.
Oh, good.
Yeah, you're not going to do it on the whole thing.
Yeah, like, oh, like when I heard before you said that, I internally panicked.
Internally screaming, just like, no! It just kind of helps to break up this rather mechanical looking edge. And you can even have like a couple sprigs flying off here if you want. Depends on how much detail you want to put into your tree that's in the background. But there you can kind of see the difference already up top. It's looking a little better. I don't know, like that guy sticking out. Looking more like a tree than the bottom half, which is just kind of like a green gaseous cloud. Right? So you go around and you just stick these leaves a little bit here, a little bit there. And remember, once you do it once, you can copy and paste. So it's not like you have to do this on every single tree. Sometimes when I'm listening to music and songs are basically, what, like 3 minutes and 30 seconds, I'll just do this for the one song. All right, done with that. Work on my character again, work on something fun again.
That's a good strategy.
Yeah, and then it just breaks it up a little bit. Or some days you're like, oh, I can't think. I don't want to have to deal with anatomy. Those are good times to be like, I can draw little leaves though. Becomes kind of meditative, like our Zentangle. I'm going to remove my Protect Alpha and do a little bit of the same also on the outline of the silhouette. Just every once in a while, you put a couple of leaf shapes. Remind people that this is a tree and not a cloud.
And
Then comes the handy dandy trick when you're like, well, my trunk has inked lines and my foliage doesn't. Do I have to trace this whole thing? The answer is no. We're going to use a little trick. And we're going to use the magic wand tool. Make sure that is on layer. Click outside of my foliage. Oh, why didn't it do it right? Control Z. Let's get these other layers off just to make sure. Nope, why you gotta do that? Let's up the tolerance. It should go right around your leaves. Like that. So your tolerance might need to be slid up if it's not doing it right. Then I'm going to go to select and I'm going to inverse just so I can see there's my leaves. And then I'm going to expand the selection by 1 or 2 pixels. I'll do like 4 so you can see what's going on. Say okay. And you can see that it has expanded the selection to include a little bit of white, a little bit of outline that you can already see there. Then I go back to my ink, or you can do it on a new layer. Get your paint bucket, and we know that we can hit the insert key. What? Why not? Is my protect alpha on? Oh, it's because it's not visible. You can fill it by a click, or you can hit the insert key, and now we have this outline that goes around our foliage for us.
Wow. Oh, look at that.
Wow. And then you come in here and you go, oh, there's a couple spots where I want to add, you know, a couple little things. You can come and do that here and there.
Wow.
Yeah, all kinds of little tricks to help us out. We have about 10 minutes, so I want to make sure that I've given you guys enough, or that if you have any questions, we can look at them. So hit me. What do you got? What's still a struggle point?
All of it, but that's okay.
All of it, but that's okay. It starts with one tree. Make one good looking tree, and then you will be able to copy and paste yourself to a whole forest.
Yeah, I was wondering if I could get some tips on, like, you know, how to do bark specifically, like in the thing I'm doing, because like the way I'm doing this, I guess the background isn't gonna have lines now.
Is not gonna have lines now? Yeah, that's fine. First thing, kind of important. What kind of trees are they?
That.
Right. I mean,
don't know,
there's different
trees.
kinds of, yeah, but there's different kinds of bark for different kinds of trees, right? If I started telling you how to do a palm tree trunk, you might
I know
go,
the basic.
oh, yeah,
I
that's
don't know
not what I
how
want.
tree names. I don't know, like American. Like imagine just looking outside in someone's front yard and you see like
Absolutely.
an average tree.
Let me grab forest photo from Google. Let's see what kind of trees we get.
Yeah, because I was trying to like I kind of want to. Can I share my screen to show you kind of what I'm?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so this is like the kind of thing
Ooh.
I'm looking for. Like I kind of want to do something like this, but I can't figure out how to do it. Where, you know,
Oh,
like
okay. Yeah, we can do that super duper easy.
that. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Let me go back to FireAlpaca. Let me get a new layer, or not a new layer, a new canvas. Go file, new, okie dokie. Because you're painting, you'd never do it on a white canvas. So I'm going to throw in some color here. Maybe it's brighter. Is it daylight? Is it sunlight?
Yeah, it's daylight. Maybe like in
Okay.
a little shadow, but like, you know, daylight.
It's daylight. Okay. Daylight has some pretty strong shadows, and so we'll be good. So let's say you got your tree trunk, which I know you do. Let me get a brown here. And I'm going to start with my shadow color. So I'm like my darkest color. And if you don't know like where or how dark to go, you can think of it this way. Let's say I want the actual color of the trunk to be this. How do I pick my shadow color? In daylight at like high noon, a shadow is 60% darker than what you're seeing here. So an easy way to do that is I grab a new layer, fill it with black, and then I take it down to 60% or 61%. Take a swatch of that.
Oh.
And then I go, okay, that's my shadow color. And you go, whoa, that's so dark. That can't possibly be. You'd be surprised. So I'm going to protect alpha. So you've got your dark side of your wood and your lighter side of your wood. And just by putting in those same kind of texture lines, you can start making the texture. Protect alpha is already on, right? So if this is the darkest dark, we also need a lighter shadow. So if I go to like say 23%, oops, wrong layer. Boop, 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 go back. On this shadow one, I go up to like 20, take it from that original color. So here's my, why is it not drawing?
Protect alpha.
Protect alpha, of course, that's always the reason, huh?
Yeah, I've learned something.
Yeah. Right, so these are my shadow colors. I can get that lighter shadow color and the darker shadow color and do a little gradient on my, oops, I didn't put my shadows on another layer. Rats, no, that's right.
Oh, isn't that clever?
Whoops, let me grab just the shadows. Get my fading tool and then pull it. And you'll get more, I think, of the style that you showed me. And then you can start sampling and just, you know, start putting in your own. But that's just shadows, right? Now we have this lighter side of the trunk also. So you're going to do that same thing in reverse. So let's say I get another layer, put my bright sunlight, which is usually a little orangey yellow. And you go like, oh, I don't actually want it that color. That's okay. We're just trying to get a little bit of a different color tone so that we can see which side is being hit by light, actual color, shadow. And we can do the same thing, putting in a few highlights of bark. And your bark texture can be like blocky, like rectangular, or it can be just lines. But once you start sort of overlapping, I like to work on like a 50% opacity too sometimes so that these colors can just start doing some mixing things that are cool. right, we're getting into a semi-believable trunk here. Color that in a little bit, give that a nice dark side. And when you come way close in, it's going to look like a bunch of scribbles. But really that's what's giving the bark the texture anyway. And you can go back and smooth it all out, but I find it not as nice as something that's loosely thrown together. Whoops, didn't want to do that.
Yeah, that helps a lot. Thank
That helps.
you.
Yeah,
all right.
that's pretty. I really like this, the way you
Get
put
the
a layer
shadows.
over it and then go to the opacity that you want and sample it.
Absolutely.
Tricky, tricky, tricky. There's so much you can do with these little programs.
And of course, if I had put this on a separate layer, you could have turned your shadows a little more bluish, a little more purplish, just by using our hue slider. Of course, I can't do it because it's all in one layer. But I go, oh, hey, I kind of like the redwood better than before.
I do too, yeah.
Or you want some dead looking trees or zombie trees, and you start shifting these around. But the value structure of how dark is dark and how light is light, that's probably going to be the most important thing. All the time. First thing you do when you wake up in the morning, put something right in a window that's in direct sunlight. Look at how dark the shadows are. I'm always surprised every single morning on how much darkness can be, especially in the cast shadows. Cast shadows are going to be really dark, but the form shadows also, I go, wow, that's pretty dark.
Pretty amazing.
Pretty amazing. So if you want to, optional, draw a tree with roots, branches, foliage, and we'll see them next time.
Yeah. I'll draw.
Maybe we'll even see Ling standing by a tree, maybe.
Yeah, can I show you what I'm doing so far? Like,
Absolutely.
I'm doing like much simpler because my background is kind of very simple-ish.
No worries.
So what I'm going for is more like just like using a paint tool.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Colors, and then sort of trying to aim for that because like it can vary in density.
Absolutely. That's perfect. That's what I would do too. Because again, you don't want people to be going like, look at that beautiful tree instead of looking at your character. Right?
No, it just looks so much more real than the others now in your picture, and you know that's great.
Now you get to do it to all the trees. Well, not all the trees. The ones in the middle ground, the ones in the background aren't going to have that texture.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for that. That really helped.
You're welcome. That
Wonderful class.
Excellent. I always feel like I'm just information dumping. And it's like roots, branches, trunk.
Well, yeah, you are, and that's why we're here. So okay.
That's fair. I think maybe for the rest of April we'll just focus on forests, and next time we can do mushrooms or bushes.
Oh, that would be great. Stick with one thing,
and then.
So good. If we do trees, we can add mushrooms next week or something like that.
Yeah. We'll just keep adding on to these.
Good.
Excellent. Have a good dinner. Good night. See you next time.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.